Hi everyone, and welcome to the final episode in our digital mini-series. In our previous episodes, we've spoken about creating and running an online ELT business and online resources for the remote classroom. Today, we'll be talking about virtual reality with our expert Nergiz Kern. Hi Nergiz.
Hi, Billy.
Hello, nice to meet you. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. It's great to have you.
Thanks for the invitation.
So
Nice
maybe
to
we
be here.
can start a little bit by you telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Okay, the most difficult question is the first one. Where to start? I'm one of those teachers. I think there are quite a few of us in English language teaching who came from other professions into teaching. So I actually started as a photographer.
Okay.
In 10th grade, I went into a photography club and I liked it, and I thought that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I trained as a photographer, and I also had I used to live in Germany, and I co-founded one of the first digital imaging businesses in Germany. So completely different. But I was interested in technology early on. Mm-hmm. And in languages, because I grew up bilingually. So I remember when I was in primary school, I somehow noticed, we speak two different languages at home and at school is different. So I had the idea of becoming a translator, which I did actually study for a bit at university later on. Yeah. And I also studied as a bilingual secretary. So these two things went hand in hand. Interest in technology has always been there. And so later when I started actually teaching, it was for me clear that I wanted to use the technology that was available, especially when you're not in an English-speaking country and you're teaching, but with the internet, you have access to so much material. It just makes sense to use it in your classes or with the students. So that's where the connection comes in. Yeah, at some point in my life, I decided I needed a change. And I wanted to actually improve my own English. Mm-hmm. And I liked that experience so much that I went for it. And I did the CELTA and then the Delta. Amazing. And later on an MA. And the MA is actually in educational technology and TESOL from the University of Manchester. But I met friends who were Brazilians, and they had a language school in Brazil. So they invited me to teach there. That was one of my first official teaching jobs, other than teaching private classes. Mm-hmm. And then in Germany, I also did a lot of in-company teaching, business English, technical English.
So your first teaching experience was one-to-one, and then you went to the school in Brazil?
Yeah, it was one-to-one private lessons and then also in-company teaching. Okay. And then at a school, it was in Brazil.
Okay, so you were quite early to the digital thing. I mean, now everybody is sort of using digital because of the pandemic, but it sounds like you were using it way before it was sort of popular, I guess.
Perhaps because we used a lot of technology at work in the digital imaging business. Yeah. So, we had the first internet connection, but so I had the technology already, if you want. But where it really started is in 2007, I moved to Turkey. Mm-hmm. And I quickly found out that I didn't want to teach private lessons or in company or anything like that here, but I wanted to teach online. So I joined a group that is called Webheads. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you've heard about them. They're a group of teachers online that use technology, and they explore technology together and help each other learn about technology. And they also have every year, back then it was 6 weeks, now it's 5 weeks sessions. Mm-hmm. It's part of TESOL Electronic Village. And one of the sessions was about technology, using technology in language teaching. Okay. And I joined the first one, I think in 2007 or 8, on Moodle. And then later there was one in which every week you explore different kinds of technologies, different apps, websites, resources, and so on. And that really helped me to see what is available and what you can do. I found out about online teaching, but back then, most of it was really preparing a slide deck in advance, and then you taught through that. It wasn't Zoom or Skype even didn't exist. I felt something was missing, and that something was what I was used from face-to-face classrooms or face-to-face one-on-one teaching. And then I think it was in one of these EVO sessions that I learned about Second Life. And I said, yes, that's exactly it. You know, a place, a virtual place even, but a place, an environment where you can be together with your students. That's how I went into online teaching and exploring how you can improve that online experience.
So by using virtual reality in sort of an online classroom?
Exactly, yeah.
And how does that work exactly? Well, maybe we can start by defining exactly what virtual reality is and how can we use that in an online class?
Okay, now virtual reality, people understand different things by it. It's a bit confusing sometimes because many use also now virtual for online. So sometimes when you see virtual class, they don't really mean virtual reality, but they mean an online class, a Zoom class. So that's not what we're talking about. Virtual reality, again, most teachers think of 360-degree videos because that's the experience that most teachers have with virtual reality and with, you might have heard of Google Cardboard. Yeah. So that was a cheap way of experiencing virtual reality, immersive virtual reality. That, you know, many teachers bought a set of these Google Cardboards and took them to class. And you put them on and you watch on YouTube these 360-degree videos, and it feels like you are in that place. You can turn around, you feel kind of you are in that place. So, and many teachers use these videos like you would use maybe any other kind of video, you know, student experiences on their own. You're not together with somebody else, but the experience itself is a solo one. And then afterwards, you know, the teacher can ask questions. How do you feel? How did you feel? What did you see? And that kind of thing. So that's 360-degree videos. Now, then there is what sometimes is called desktop VR. And this is like Second Life is one example. And this is a virtual reality application that sits on your computer. So you can use any laptop, any kind of computer, download the program. You can compare it to video games, perhaps. That will be the closest thing that most people have experienced. So you are represented by a figure that is called an avatar that you can, you know, adapt the way you like. And then with that avatar, you can experience that virtual world. You can go to different places and you can meet your students, you can meet other people. So that's desktop VR. And then we have fully immersive VR, which is again experienced with a headset like Google Cardboard, but more advanced if you want. So these, I'm sure everyone has seen now these goggles that you put on. Now, again, this is not such a new technology. It's existed for a while, but it was very expensive and very cumbersome. It was until recently even. They were lighter, but you still needed a computer to be connected to.
Because I think when I think about virtual reality, I think of the headsets, you know, and I was imagining sort of students putting their phones into the headsets and looking around. So it's good to know that there are different kinds of virtual reality as well.
Exactly. Now, as I just said, they have become lighter, faster, more sophisticated, better screen resolution, and so on. And now the tethering has come off too. So now you're actually mobile. You can just put the goggles into your bag and go somewhere. Or when you are experiencing it, when you put it on, you don't have to be near your computer. Plus, the technology now allows you, it has got hand tracking, for example. Some even have mouse tracking and eye tracking. That means that not only do you feel immersed into a world where you can walk around, look around, but you also move. So and this is very important for language classes. So you can actually gesture, and your avatar that represents you in that world gestures as well. So you can shake your hand, shake hands, you can shake your head, you can grab things, and basically in real life, in your physical, I don't really like that word real life, but in your physical environment, you make these movements. So I make the grabbing movement, and the avatar that represents me also grabs.
And is it a situation where, for example, with the videos or with the headsets, if a student were to use virtual reality, would they see an empty classroom, or would they see the other students as well?
Well, it depends. You have to imagine these headsets like Quest, for example, one of the most popular ones now, the Oculus Quest, or HTC Vive. It's a bit like on your smartphone. You have different applications that you can download. And if that application is for multiple users, then you can meet with other people.
Wow.
For example, a lot of this is used in what we call social VR applications. Facebook has got one, for example. Microsoft has got one, Altspace VR, for example, or VR chat, Rec Room. There are so many of them, but you can just go there. So you put on your headset, you start that application, and it transports you into this world. And in this world, just like when you go into the city or into a cafe, there are other people, and you can either randomly meet people, you can agree with friends, let's go and meet. You can play sports together, for example. I know people who meet with friends or with family members, and they play table tennis. So each of them is in their own homes, but you can actually play table tennis and really have to make those movements. And you sweat. People do workouts on their own or with others. So anyway, so social VR, it's just like if you're learning a language, just like you would go, let's say you travel to the country where the target language is spoken, and you go to the city center to meet people. You can do that in VR as well.
Okay, excellent.
And there are applications where you can be on your own and you interact, for example, with non-playing characters that are called non-playing characters that are chatbots, really. So where you interact with these chatbots, and the dialogues are pre-recorded if you want to, so a bit more limited.
Okay, interesting. And how easy is it for a teacher to create this 360-degree video if they want to?
Creating the videos is not that difficult, actually. Everyone almost who's got a more modern smartphone can create at least simple 360-degree videos.
Yeah.
And some teachers do that. But you also have lots of 360-degree videos on YouTube. There is a specific channel, even where you just have 360-degree videos. You can use those, so you don't really need to create your own. Yeah, the only reason would be to create your own would be really if you wanted to personalize it, like your own environment. You want to show them where you live, for example.
Okay.
And in fact, some teachers even have their students create 360-degree videos, or use what was very popular was Google. What was it called now? Where you use Google. It wasn't called Google Explorer. Anyways, they stopped the development of that now, but it allowed students to use these Google View images to create 360-degree experiences where you take your peers to specific places and they can see that area and explore it. So that is relatively easy to do.
I guess it's beneficial if, for example, I did not know that 360-degree videos were a type of virtual reality. So I guess in that sense, could you use it in an activity as a teacher if you wanted your students to maybe do a presentation about, obviously not where they live, but maybe their favourite street in their town, for example, then they could make a 360-degree video and then speak about it perhaps in an online class. Would that be an example of using virtual reality?
Yes, absolutely. But instead of speaking about it in the class, what you would do is you share it. There are platforms where you can share it. And then the other students, your peers, can go and explore and experience this place.
Wow.
Rather than you talking about it and showing it.
Okay.
So they can actually go into that street and be in front of your favorite cafe or whatever it is that you're showing, or the museum, and experience that. Yeah, so if you wanted to do project-based classes, you could do that. If you don't have that much time, you could ask your students to use existing videos or apps. For example, a lot of museums now have 360-degree experiences that you can have, and you just go to their website and it loads on your computer, or if you have a headset on the headset, and you can be, let's say, in Louvre, and you can see an exhibition immersed into that environment. And finally, coming back to immersive VR and using it in the classroom, another possibility is to use specific applications that are made for learning. Mm-hmm. There are many, many applications for all kinds of subjects like chemistry, biology, history, and so on. Not so many for English language learning yet, but one of them is Immerse, where you have basically different scenes that you can take your students to. So you have a teacher application and a student application. The students use the goggles or the headset, and the teacher uses their desktop to facilitate the experience. And so you can take your students to different environments depending on the language that you want them to practice. For example, if they're learning, you've just done a unit, let's say, on shopping, you can take them to a shopping center and they go off and they look at the different things that are available to buy, and they try on clothes perhaps, and then they can talk with each other. Do you like this? What do you think about that? Whatever the language is, and then they can go to the cash register and they can pay. And actually, they have to do all these things. So it's not imagining that you are in a shopping mall. You are actually in a shopping mall.
That's the thing, isn't it? I think when you try and do role plays and things in the real world classroom, when I was teaching, you say, oh yeah, imagine that you're at the doctor's and you're having a conversation with the doctor. And I guess VR gives you that experience. It's very immersive. So what are some other benefits to using VR, do you think?
Well, I think this is quite a big one because, it's a great tool. It has some great use cases also for language learning, where it's an authentic tool that you can use if someone wants to practice communication skills. Mm-hmm. And they regularly use video conferencing. Of course, you don't need to take them to virtual reality. You will use Zoom.
Yeah.
For example, I once wrote a chapter on technology in ESB, and one of the case studies was a politician who often, that was 10 years ago, often interviews in Skype. Mm-hmm. So of course you will take that person into Skype. That's the most authentic tool and the most appropriate tool for that purpose. Yeah. But if you, as we just said, if you want to practice being at the doctor's, in a cafe or whatever, it's quite difficult for many students to imagine that. Even when you're in the classroom, you can push some tables together and so on, bring some realia into the classroom, but you're limited. Yeah. And so it's a lot of cognitive load for some students to imagine the scene and then also play it and then do that in a different language. Yeah. So with virtual reality, you take them into that place. It's much easier to use the language. Mm-hmm. So that's one. And generally, what we can say is virtual reality is experiential. You don't talk about what is happening, you don't read or watch others doing things, you actually do it yourself.
Yeah.
And because you feel immersed, there's a feeling of presence.
Mm-hmm.
Usually students are very motivated. It's much more engaging.
Yeah.
Because you do things, it's also more memorable because we remember experiences, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But we don't necessarily remember after, if you have Zoom classes for a couple of months, I doubt you remember in which months or when exactly you practiced one specific language item, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. You would go away from the class as a student and you'd want to tell other people about what you'd experienced as well, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think I would go home, for example, as a student, or you are already home when it's remote teaching, but you wouldn't go to the kitchen to your mom or whoever and say, oh, look, we've just role played being, at the airport. It's not that exciting, is it? But you will easily find, especially if it's maybe younger students also, I say, hey, mom, I've been to a museum, or we've just dived underwater and I swam with fish.
Definitely. I think it's really hard as well because we assume that students have experienced the things perhaps that we have as teachers, something as simple as going to the doctors. But if you have a secondary student or a young teen, maybe they haven't done that, or maybe they've never flown on a plane, so have never been to an airport. So using virtuality for that experience, I think is really, really, it's more inclusive as well, I feel.
Inclusive in what way?
Inclusive in the fact that if students haven't experienced something, they're not sort of like, if a student hasn't travelled abroad, but many students in the class have, then we're not excluding them from the conversation because they're experiencing it as well through virtual reality, perhaps.
Yes, that's true. That's actually a very good point you're making there. Sometimes we have to be extremely careful. I remember a teacher once told me she wanted to teach food items. So she had her students draw pictures of their fridges and the content in their fridges. And you wouldn't believe it, but some parents complained and said, it's none of your business what's in our fridge.
Yeah,
because, maybe they can't afford certain things.
Exactly.
I don't know. And the same, of course, even for more expensive experiences, like having been abroad. So if you want to talk about holidays after the holidays, where have you been? Kind of, it's, as you said, it might not be so inclusive, but if you take them first to an experience that they can all experience together also. So you can have field trips with your students, and then they have experienced that together, and they can talk about that, they can write about it. I've seen, for example, virtual reality an application that takes you into Anne Frank's house. So you can go there and explore that place, and it's something that you can't do.
No, and it's
with
like
all of your students.
Yeah, it's like a school field trip, isn't it? So they're getting to experience and have fun together.
Yes. So you can take them to field trips.
That's amazing. And in our first episode in this mini digital series, we spoke to someone about sort of the future of ELT, and he said that he couldn't see virtual reality becoming sort of a norm in the classroom, mainly because sort of the target market for them was sort of Indonesia, India, and a lot of countries where perhaps there isn't as much access to technology or even maybe a laptop as there would be in some Western countries or other countries perhaps. So what would you say to that? Do you think that it is still a growing market, or do you think there are still some barriers to entry?
Yeah, I listened to that. No, it's actually both. First of all, I think, just because some technology is not available yet to everyone, it doesn't mean we shouldn't use it with those who have access to it.
Yeah.
For many reasons, really. Let me go back a little bit. I just said at the beginning also that I've always liked technology, but some of my best classes were also with zero technology, or except, the marker and the whiteboard, where you just walk into the classroom and you work with the language that emerges, and you add to that, and you just see what happens and you work with that.
Yeah.
You can have great experiences with that. So I don't necessarily think that classrooms where there is no technology, you can't have good teaching. You can have good teaching with no technology.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But technology opens up sometimes different experiences, and it will always depend on your aims, on the context, and on many factors, really, why it makes sense to use technology if you have it available.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with virtual reality, it's a future technology, but it's also a present technology. As I said, my experiences with virtual reality, desktop VR, Second Life was a decade ago nearly.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the first. Before me, there were other people who had already started exploring it. And so it's not that it's a very new technology. It is being used now. It's basically, it's used in education also, in many different fields, medical, particularly architecture, also engineering. So it's becoming more and more common in the professional world.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of work-based skills training is happening in VR.
Yeah.
So I think it's time that we use it in language teaching as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminds me a little bit of like 10 years ago with smartphones and tablets. I remember 10 years ago, I had like one student who had a smartphone.
Yeah.
And in pre-sessional courses, it was mainly international students, Chinese, Middle Eastern students. There was maybe one student who had a smartphone. And then the following year, it was maybe 2 or 3. And then maybe one student with a tablet. And now, you can hardly find anyone without. So you have these bring your own devices projects where students just use their own devices. Whereas a couple of years ago, some schools had these cards with sets of tablets or sets of smartphones, and you had to, as a teacher, you had to book them for your class.
Yeah.
And this situation we have now with VR headsets. You have schools where you can book the VR lab, and then you go into that VR lab with your students, and they use whatever you planned for that lesson. You have a field trip, or they use an application visiting a place or whatever they have to do. And then, you use that in your class. So you have that same kind of situation. But already you have now many students who own VR headsets for gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And always gaming is the first. They are very quick with embracing new technologies.
Definitely.
So you have those, and then now you will have many who use it at their workplace. So people already own VR headsets. It is already here. It is being used. It is also now being used in English language teaching, finally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we will see a lot more. People now are getting familiar with it because we have moved online. Now the next step is how can we improve this online experience? And it's quite natural then to find virtual reality is actually the next step.
Yeah, I guess because obviously the pandemic moved everything online very quickly, and a lot of language schools and teachers or freelancers didn't have a chance to sort of prepare themselves for that. So I guess if this had happened maybe 2 years in the future, then maybe we would sort of be au fait with the technology around virtual reality, and teachers might be more up to date. But then on the other hand, like you said, from my experience of working in language schools, when new technologies come in, such as we had a class where we had to book out iPads. This was maybe 2 years ago. So we had to book out iPads and do a session on an iPad. And many teachers didn't like it because it was new. It was a sort of technology that they weren't used to. So they would just book out the iPads, but actually not use them at all. So it's really interesting what you're saying, because I think you're right. Even if it doesn't involve the VR headsets, even using the 360 video is something that would make classes a lot more immersive.
Absolutely. And you see, you have these 3 different types of VRs. You can also use desktop VR. Most of the desktop VR applications are actually for free.
Okay, that's good to know.
At least they have a free version. So whether it's Second Life or Old Space VR or VR Chat or all of these, And more of them are being developed now, really. And you can just download them and explore them and use them for a session as an experimental session. As a teacher, you don't necessarily have to say, I know everything about this. Look, there is this new technology. Let's try it out. And you can explore it with your students as long as you can fit it into the curriculum and it makes sense. And you might want to use perhaps a language point such as modal verbs. Might this work for language teaching? Could you do this in virtual reality? Whatever it is you're practicing. Yeah, they present about their experience, for example. They say whether they like it or not.
I was going to ask you about what you think the first steps would be for a teacher. So I guess it would be that, wouldn't it? Just getting to know it and maybe just practicing it with students.
Exactly. You can, if you're courageous enough, you can practice it with your students immediately, but you can also explore it on your own. As I said, download the free versions and just try it out. And then once you try it out, really, then the ideas come. But you also don't have to do this on your own. There are groups for educators. Again, back in the Second Life times when many of us were exploring desktop VR, we formed a teacher group, a community of practice, if you want to, and we had regular meetings where it's more fun when you're in such an environment together and you go on field trips and you exchange ideas of how you could use these in your lessons. But it's also less frustrating. There are, the teachers who know more than you and that you can learn from them. And this exists now with immersive VR as well. For example, there is a Facebook group called Educators in VR. They have a website too, and they do exactly the same thing. They meet regularly in different spaces. They explore different applications and discuss how this can be used. So join one of these groups, download some of the tools, try them out. If you have headsets, download some of the applications onto your headset that are available and just try them out. And then with your students, I always suggest start small. Virtual reality is the best technology now, and you have to use it for your whole class. I always think blended options are the best, so you can always have part of your lesson in virtual reality, or you might even ask your students to explore something outside the classroom. And then in the classroom, you talk about it, or you do something in the classroom, and afterwards you send them to a virtual reality environment, and they do something after class. So it doesn't even need to be within your lesson, depending on your situation. But yeah, start small. Don't pretend you know everything. Make it clear it's experimental, and just use it for part of your lesson, for the practical part, for example, and see how it goes.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice, because I think teachers are often nervous about sort of trying to use a new technology, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so would you use some of these virtual reality activities that you've mentioned alongside a standard course book? So would they be activities that you'd have to come up with yourself? Or have you seen any course books or any materials that have tried to incorporate virtual reality activities?
I don't know of any course book that would be
neither.
very advanced. Whichever publisher wants to be first, I'd be interested to get involved in that. I think we have a lot of teachers and editors who are interested in this, so that might be something to explore. But so you will find a lot online. As I said, teachers have done it already, maybe not necessarily for language teaching, but you can look at what they've done in other areas with other subjects. But there are also applications that come with lesson plans.
Okay.
Again, I mentioned Immerse because I work for Immerse online as a research manager also currently. In Immerse, you have ready-made lesson plans, so you can go. It's the ones with the scenes, so you in which you can take students into different scenes in fully immersive VR, and there are embedded lesson plans. So in each scene, you have lesson plans, CFR aligned. So you can search for the kind of language you want to teach, or whether it's functional language or grammar point or vocabulary. And you can also search for the level of of the lesson or of your students' language level. And you can use those lesson plans, but it also includes a planning hub where you can plan your own lessons based on your curriculum. So if you're using a specific course book and you have to follow that, then once you've maybe seen how the lessons are planned for virtual reality, you can use those as starting points and then adapt them to your own needs, or write lesson plans from scratch.
And is that a free platform to use, or is it a subscription?
Immerse actually is you pay per minute, so it's mainly for language schools, but individual teachers could use it as well. So basically, for the teacher, it's for free. The teacher application, so you can explore it, learn how to use it, and plan your lessons, and you don't pay anything. But then when you take your students into the app, you pay per minute.
Okay.
And many other applications. For example, there is also one if you want to use 360-degree videos with pre-recorded situations, like in a bakery, and you want to learn French, you can participate in these dialogues. They have, I think it's also for institutions. I don't know about their pricing, but there is usually a free application or some free lessons that you can try out.
And do you think that as it becomes more popular or more common for people to use, that there will be more content, more lesson plans, and then in turn things will get cheaper? Because at the moment, I think the thing that puts people off is the fact that it is quite costly. Like you said, if you don't have a headset, maybe a school would have to invest in that. And if you have to pay per minute for experiences, perhaps that might put people off as well.
Yeah, definitely the prices are coming down. Like with every technology, when it's new, it's more pricey. I can say if you want the convenience that it's a safe environment and the scenes have been built for you and there are lesson plans and so on, obviously you pay for that. There are free options like, let's say, Mozilla Hubs or Second Life that you don't need anything extra. You already have your laptops, for example, and there might be paid options, but there are also free options. So it really, but then you have to put in your own time, building scenes, for example, writing onboarding documents for your students and all that kind of thing. So you don't have that support. So it depends really what your situation is. Do you have money and want convenience, or you don't have money and you want to do it all by yourself? But the price is definitely coming down. And then what some schools are doing is actually they're not investing in the headsets. They advertise it for students who already have headsets, or they sell the course as a bundle with the headset.
Okay.
And this is particularly convenient if your students are online and remote, because if you, let's say you're based in the UK as a language school, but you have international students, you don't want to be sending expensive headsets around the world, even if they buy it from you. So it makes sense to target perhaps students who already have headsets, or you can guide them to where they can buy headsets locally. Or use desktop VR at the beginning and see whether students are interested, and then go the next step using headsets.
And I guess, as you said, if you do use the 360 videos, perhaps that already exist on YouTube, or if you just create one on your phone, then that's free, I guess, isn't it? And that's just an introduction.
Exactly, yeah.
And do you personally have any success stories of using virtual reality with students? Or have you heard of any teachers introducing virtual reality that has been successful?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't taught with fully immersive VR yet. I'm mainly busy with researching and working with researchers, because we need a lot of research in this field now. Yeah. Previously, yes, in Second Life, I taught business English classes, general English classes, and I also documented all of that online in my blog. Now, a lot of it is happening in Japan, or in Asian countries. They are usually, I don't know what they're more fond of technology, but there are actually language schools who they used to use it in class, so with local students in the classroom. So that's an option, but you can, of course, use it also for online teaching where your students are not in the same location. Some language schools like EC have signed up, for example. They've been using it. They are offering summer camps in virtual reality. We have now International House Manchester, and they want to try hybrid learning that includes virtual reality elements.
Yeah, I think maybe summer camps is a really good way to go, because that sort of tends to be younger learners, but not too young, sort of 10 to maybe 18 perhaps, that would really benefit from using that. So maybe this time next year it could be something that we see a lot more of.
Absolutely, yes.
Of course, the answer is yes to this question. But do you think VR is the future of ELT? And what else do you see happening in the digital world of ELT in the future?
Yeah, I maybe answered that already. It's basically the present and the future.
Yeah.
It's already the present technology for some language schools. But we will hear more of it in the future. Yeah, it will be a bit like with online teaching, perhaps in the beginning. We've had language school teaching online now for quite a few years, but only last year everybody had to go online. I don't think virtual reality will be the only technology, always all other online teaching. It has, as I said earlier, all tools have their place, or environments, if you want. Yeah, but it will be more common. I think students will also start asking, and that's happening actually, do you offer VR classes?
Mm-hmm.
Last year was emergency remote teaching. And now that many see that actually online will either be forced on them for longer, or they like the experience and they want to keep it. Now schools are trying to improve the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it with virtual reality. This is where we see a lot of interest now in virtual reality. They say, yes, that's it. We want something that is more like the physical classroom, perhaps. But generally, whether it's with VR or without VR, and this year will be the year where everybody is trying to improve the online experience.
Yeah.
I think the focus will be now also a bit on the student experience, not just the technology, because last year, as you said, schools and teachers were not prepared. So they actually had to grapple with the technology, and perhaps some of the teaching wasn't as good as that teacher could do in the classroom.
Yeah.
They will again now, hopefully, and that's what I've been hearing, focus more on how can we improve the student experience.
That's
the learning
really
experience.
Crucial. Yeah, that's really, really crucial, isn't it? So you mentioned your blog, and so how can people read more about your research and find out more about virtual reality? Are there any conferences, webinars, or your own personal website that you'd recommend?
So my personal website, at the moment, really, I'm focused on this virtual reality topic, and I blog about that. So nergizkern.com is my website. Mm-hmm. And if you go to resources in virtual reality, you can find all my past and present experience with virtual reality and resources. I've also been blogging on the Immerse website, so immerse.online.
Excellent.
Again, just to say, one thing that is important for me is that teachers shouldn't be afraid of using and trying out technology. You don't have to leave everything aside and try this new technology, but start experimenting with it, or join at least some educator groups and see what is happening, so that you're aware this is coming, and so that teachers and language schools are not surprised like they were last year.
Yeah. Excellent. I've learned so much, honestly. A lot of my questions were based around the headsets, and I realise now that that's just only one part of it. There's so much more to it. So yeah, you've opened my eyes. Thank you very much. I wish I had some students so I could try it out, but I might just play around myself and see what happens.
I hear many teachers say that, really. Many teachers are excited. So usually you see the tendency of teachers being reluctant, not another technology, please. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of excitement around it, and that's good to see and to hear.
Definitely. And thank you so much for coming on and for having a chat and for sharing your expertise as well. It's been really great.
Thank you very much.
So thanks for listening to our episode today. We really hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on our social media channels, so do feel free to get in touch on Instagram, Facebook or LinkedIn. Our next mini-series will be looking at ELT buzzwords, so common words or phrases that are found in ELT teaching or publishing. If you would like to be on the show, do feel free to get in touch and share your ideas or specialism. You can send us an email at info@eltcpd.com. Our next mini-series will be launching on the 26th of July, starting with mediation. Make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube and your favourite podcast site to be the first to hear when the episode goes live. Until then, bye for now.